Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree. I am a transgender woman who talks about all things horror. And I know my videos are coming late this week, but that's a work problem because I had to work. My work schedule got all jumbled, so I had to work on Wednesday, which is the day I usually record. So today I'm talking about Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And before you come at me and say you said you'd never review Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, go back and rewatch that video. Yes, I did say I would never review Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. If I mistakenly said I wouldn't review its sequels, I didn't include Return of the Killer Tomatoes because this is one I do want to talk about. But I didn't want to watch that first movie simply because it has an outdated and not funny, unfortunate, homophobic comment that I just don't feel like revisiting, which is sometimes the case for some of these old movies. Not always. It just depends on the movie. But in this particular case, I have no interest in going back and rewatching Attack of the Killer Tomatoes because it wasn't a good movie to begin with. Now, Return of the Killer Tomatoes is an entirely different story. First, the theme song is fucking jamming in this movie. This is the version of the theme song that was adapted for the cartoon Fox Saturday morning animated Attack of the Killer Tomatoes cartoon, which was fun to watch. That was what got me into Killer Tomatoes in the first place. This movie is also notable because it has more traditional humor. It's less of that snobby college humor, which I didn't understand before I went to college, and having gone to college, I'm still not a fan of. So there is that. Return of the Killer Tomatoes is more of an action comedy. Not so much horror. None of the Killer Tomatoes movies are pure horror. They're comedies first. Which means they fall into the subgenre of comedy slash horror, not the other way around. They're not horror comedies. Like Ghostbusters is a comedy, but it's a horror theme. Beetlejuice is a comedy, but it's a horror theme. The same thing with Killer Tomatoes. It's a comedy first with a sort of horror theme. Now, Return of the Killer Tomatoes is also notable because it introduces the mad scientist, Gang Green, who was the villain of the animated program. It also introduces FT, which is short for Fuzzy Tomato. And I do not, off the top of my head, remember the name of the female tomato who makes friends with the protagonists in this movie. I will not call them heroes because they're not heroic at all. Actually, they're kind of fucking cowards. This movie is also notable for being one of, if not the first appearance of George Clooney. I don't know if it's his first appearance, but it's an early appearance of George Clooney. And so it gets props for that as well because, who doesn't like George Clooney? He's only the 17th greatest Batman out of 12 Batmans. I know. The math adds up, trust me. They just got a few more shitty Batmans to make. That being said, let's actually dive into Return of the Killer Tomatoes. In true B-movie fashion, this one actually starts off with a mock-you-style fake, B-movie wraparound, kind of like a Last Drive-In or Dinner and a Movie type thing, where they're going to sit down and watch his shitty movie and then talk about it. And they accidentally, I'm using air quotes here because it was actually intentional, put on a smut film instead, to which the horror host is like, yeah, sure, fine, this is better. But then the producer or director or somebody's like, no, we already told people we were watching this other film, so let's watch this other film. Which is a cute gag, I'll admit. So it already has horror tropes in it that are familiar to horror fans, which I like. It is sort of, in a roundabout way, a spoof of horror movies. But it's not done as an intentionally fuck you making fun of horror fans, like the scary movies or disaster movie and not another teen movie, etc., etc., where I feel like they're not just attacking horror movies, they're personally attacking horror fans. I get the feeling that the assholes who made the Killer Tomatoes movies are horror fans themselves who just wanted to have a fun time. And while Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and the subsequent sequels are pure fucking rubbish, not worth your time at all, Return of the Killer Tomatoes is the diamond in the rough. And it's the actual only legit good one in the entire franchise. And this is the one if you're going to watch a movie about Killer Tomatoes, this is the one to watch. It takes jabs at every fucking thing, so kudos for that. As someone who did work in the broadcast news industry, I have a mild respect for the character who is pretending to be a fake newscaster, just because I used to do that when I was a kid, and that's what got me into broadcasting in the first place. And I worked in the news business for 7 years, so I can kind of sort of relate to him because I was also a goofball dumbass. I'm not gonna deny it. You can tell by watching my videos. I'm kind of a dork. No shame in that. Dorks are cool. No, we're not. But you know what? Pretty fly for a white guy says we are from a certain point of view. So there is that. That being said, I highly recommend you watch Return of the Killer Tomatoes. I think it's a fun movie. It's an enjoyable movie. It is absolutely a buy. It is 100% the only Tomatoes movie worth a shit. So it's the one that you'll have in your collection. Please don't watch that rubbish first movie. And let's just all collectively agree that Killer Tomatoes Eat France never fucking happened. Thank you very much. Stay cool.